Hello everyone. Now, this time I will be featuring the Schultz again. The last time I featured the Schultz, I mostly focused on what I consider the strengths and the weaknesses of the ship, what it can and what it can't do. This game here, Islands of Ice, it is top tier, but the matchmaking isn't too kind, mostly because not only does the enemy have a Kaga, but if you look at the DDs, we don't really have any good cap contesting destroyers. We have two Schultzes. On the other hand, the enemy team has a Yugomo and an Östergötland, both which are far superior at capping. Basically all their DDs outspot me, and all of them can also easily torpedo me. And I'd say everyone except the Z31 basically outguns me as well. So I know from the get-go that we're gonna be in some trouble here. Now, I decided to feature this game because, well, this is the record in the Schultz so far. I actually got it a couple days ago, I don't know, half a week ago, something or so. And I checked around to see if anyone has managed to beat it since, but the closest anyone has gotten is about 15-20% less damage. So this is still the record to beat in the Schultz. So I decided I might as well feature it, even though I did just recently make a review on the ship. This is a fairly good example of playing the ship to its strengths. Now, obviously, I want to get close to the caps, but I can't contest the caps. You can't do that in the Schultz. The Schultz just doesn't have the durability. Also, Pommern is AFK on this flank, and I'm not sure if the Caracciolo is going up the flank, so we don't really have too much going on this flank. What I'm trying to do is utilize that fighter plane, and the Indomitable left on the A-cap, hoping it will perhaps provide me vision of something so that I can utilize that to deal damage. Also, the Wakilin is pushing towards A, so I'm moving towards A just to support him, ideally trying to help him in case he runs into any enemy destroyers. But the fundamental problem here is that Schultz just can't push in the caps, and on the other flank the Östergötland torps are Bliska. I see the Z31 of all these actually pushing into A. Now that is the one destroyer that I feel confident fighting, and that is for obvious reasons. It's Z31. It is an absolute garbage ship. A couple of ships open up on me. Most importantly, a Lazo is spotted, and Lazo is of course a light cruiser, very thinly armored, basically a Shores. So I instantly load AP and I take him as my priority target and score a good 12k AP volley on him. As long as it gives me broadside, I will be able to punish him quite heavily with that AP. Now, it doesn't do that well against all cruisers, but tier 7 light cruisers, you will absolutely butcher if they give that much broadside. They start taking me as the target, so I do use one of my 3 smokes, because, well, I have plenty of targets to shoot at here. This is a good position to smoke up, because I will have plenty of different targets to switch from. I can shoot the Lazo until he leaves range, I can shoot the Marco Polo, I can potentially shoot the Z31 that just got spotted. I might be able to shoot the Pommerns. Most importantly, the Sims is really far away, and the Z31 is far enough away that it's highly unlikely that I will be getting torpedoed in the smoke. More importantly, Östergötland has been spotted on the other side of the map, and I assume the Yugomo is also somewhere there since we have 2 DDs on this flank. So this is a very safe smoke, even though it's kind of in the center of the map and with plenty of targets to shoot, which normally tends to lead to pretty unsafe smoking positions. This one is quite safe because of the amount of map information we have. The problem is, of course, my team has already lost 2 DDs on the other flank. So the other Schultz died. He tried to push into the cap, something you never do in a Schultz, and I think he got torpedoed to death or something similar. That's basically what happens. You don't push into a cap with the Schultz, and he learned it the hard way. On the other hand, I'm going to utilize this smoke as much as I can, deal as much damage as I can. The torpedoes I sent, they were preemptively kind of for the Z31 or potentially for anyone coming around that island like this Marco Polo is. The torpedoes are stupidly slow, but they do have decent damage. It's just that the speed makes them, well, I mentioned in the past that I kind of throw them out and hope for the best. I throw them out every cooldown and I kind of hope for the best, but the expectations are incredibly low. As long as no one has hydro and is kind of caught full broadside or nose in, they can be good, but if anyone is even slightly angled away, they're very easy to kite away from because of their slow speed. Still, the smoke was good. And the torpedoes were even better. I managed to catch the clumsy Z-31 and get a devastating strike on him with the torpedoes. So that's a good 60,000 damage with the first smoke and the first set of torps, and I just continue firing. There's nothing really around. The biggest threat would be the carrier showing up, but they're all playing very far back, so even though we don't have a smoke, we open water gunboat and we try to put as much pressure on this Marco Polo as possible. Also, I do want to push into the cap. Sims gets spotted, I instantly switch to him. You want to utilize every opportunity you have to shoot enemy DDs. The reason for this is they just outgun you and outspot you so hard. Basically, DDs hard counter you in multiple ways, even lower tier destroyers. So your one advantage is your better than average dispersion and your good shell velocity for a DD. Your downsides is of course your lack of DPM, but make up for that with the range and the speed, so that whenever something vulnerable is spotted, you try to shoot them. Lazo engages again, so obviously I take him as the primary target. Marco Polo isn't that scary, even though, I mean, it's a battleship without HE, he's got sap, but I don't eat full pins, so the damage he does is very, very limited. So I kind of just ignore all of them and just try to pick up this Lazo, and with a Citadel I manage to secure the kill. Sims is spotted again. I am pretty far away though, so Sims will struggle to hit me, so I try to kind of glide behind the island and keep the battleships behind the island, while at the same time making it kind of 1 versus 1 against the Sims, but it's actually not going to stay a 1 versus 1 because I got rocket planes coming in and I got my French DD about to pop around the corner, so I'm willing to tank this guy for a bit, just because it buys time for my French DD to pop out, as we can see, and secure the Sims kill. So this is very, very good, because now we killed off all of their destroyers. They only have one DD left, the Esther Jutland, and he was last seen on sea, and he's probably quite far away still. They got a triple battleship lineup pushing through here. Note that I dropped the torps not on the first guy, not the first Pommern, but the second Pommern. There's multiple reasons for this. Normally the first Pommern tends to be the one who runs Hydro, since these guys are in a division. And second of all, I want to reverse and cap, because my French destroyer has died, so I'm kind of trying to reverse in such a way that I can keep the guns on the first target while at the same time capping the objective. And obviously I don't want to torp him, because then I lose my target to shoot at, so that's why my torpedoes are actually for the second guy. They might look aimed at the first, but that's just because they're so incredibly slow, it actually takes them such a long time to actually reach the target. Pommern finally pushes up, and at the same time I manage to proc gun dilutions, which means faster reload and more damage output. Obviously I was expecting these Pommerns, since they are in the division and we're playing on a highly superior EU server, I was expecting them to be running Hydro, but surprisingly the Pommern in the back actually eats a torpedo. The bad part is he is turning in, and that means I cannot stick around, because of Pommern rushing me with potential Hydro active, and as mentioned before, the Schultz is big, the Schultz is slow, and if I get caught, I will most certainly get killed. So I decide, no, we can live without this camp for now, I'm just gonna bail. I drop another set of torps at the Pommern in the back, and I continue shooting the front target, because once again the firing angles aren't that good. If I torp the front guy and try to shoot the guy in the back, well, obviously I will struggle keeping my my guns on the target. I keep shooting. The idea is I kill this guy. I am spotted, but I kill this guy, and the Pommern in the back turns to shoot me with his main guns. That is the optimistic idea here. And by the looks of it, he might actually be doing exactly that, turning to try to use his back guns, because Pommern firing angles are so bad, and he ends up eating 5 torpedoes, and surprisingly that should have been a devastating, I'm pretty sure, but the game decided not to give it to me. Still, 2 devastatings with the torpedoes. You can see why this is a very unique Schultz game, because that does not happen often. Schultz torpedoes aren't exactly known for their potency, so this is very much a kind of one-of-a-kind game in that sense. I start farming the Marco Polo. He's some sort of secondary build Marco Polo, but of course Italian secondaries are absolute junk and do basically no damage, and he also only has access to sap, no risk of him loading HE, so I try to do as much damage as possible to him and kind of bully him away from the cap, because we really can't afford to lose a cap. The game is incredibly close, it's a 6 versus 6, they have one cap, we got C, but obviously C is about to be lost. We have a Gneiser now all alone on that flank. I'm keeping an eye out on the Leon. Note that I'm spotted while shooting. I'm trying to figure out what's spotting me, but I think it's the great range that I have is allowing the Surrey across the map to kind of spot me while I'm firing. I reverse because of that, and basically the Surrey is outside of my firing range, so I managed to go undetected. Gneiser now dies. You see the damage on the Marco Polo is quite pitiful as soon as he's angled. That is the downside, of course, of being so heavily AP focused. So, at this point, I try to switch targets to the Leon. I drop another set of preemptive torps. Once again, I try to throw these torps out whenever they're on cooldown. Of course, you don't want to throw them out if some friendly teammates are pushing in, but considering everyone is reversing and there's no friendly targets in sight, I might as well go for it. It looks like the Surrey is pushing in, and I smoke up mostly because the Kaga is sending in planes. The AA on this ship is trash. You can honestly only hope that the carrier is a potato and he eats your flak, but even with the full gun build, you only really have 3 flak, so honestly, not really that impressive. If you dodge just those 3 flaks, your continuous DPS is garbage, so generally speaking, I put 0 faith in the defensive AA, and I'm willing to use my last smoke just to keep me safe and hopefully get my team kind of moving, playing a bit more aggressive. The Surrey is pushing up, which is fantastic. I do want to utilize the smoke to its maximum duration as much as I can, because if I'm forced to open water gunboat, there are all sorts of threats there, most notably the carrier rocket planes. Surrey goes undetected. My battleships are kind of loitering behind me, which is a bit annoying, but I'm hoping my Pommern can secure the A-cap, because for some reason the enemy team still hasn't taken C. They only entered it now, but that's actually given us a lot of time to claw back the points, and more importantly, Pommern does manage to secure the A before the carrier planes show up. The Surrey pops up. He is trying to play aggressive, trying to pick up some potentially free kill. Carrier picks up the Leon, and obviously he becomes my primary target, trying to get as much damage in on him as possible. I only have 25 seconds of smoke, and at this point I'm basically committed to killing him and not leaving the smoke, because you need to leave very early if you're gonna abandon your smoke. But it seems like he's giving too much broadside, kind of trying to blind fire me in my smoke, getting a hit in, but he's trading far too much health for it. He goes nose in, which is a bit annoying, so I do get some volleys off, but right before I'm about to pick up the kill, the Caracciolo actually picks him up instead. Meanwhile, the Pommern finished off the low HP Marco Polo I was shooting earlier. Now, this game is actually quite far from over. I've racked up 218,000 damage, but the reason it is actually quite far from over is that, well, they have 2 caps. We need to push into the cap and take it, but they got a lot of tools to continually reset us with. They have the carrier, and more importantly, they have the Östergötland, and I don't really have any tools against him. I'm trying to ping my team to capture B, because I would like the Pommern to join us, so we push in there, all 3 of us together. Ideally the Fiji would join us, so we would be 4 of us, so could combine our AA and perhaps mitigate the strikes of the carrier. I don't have time to loiter, I have to go in there, but I'd really like to have help doing it. I asked my CV to focus on spotting the Östergötland, and I'm asking the Pommern to come help us in B, because I really need the AA. The carrier gets a bit annoyed that I ask him for that, but honestly, these days, most carriers don't understand the concept of spotting destroyers. Luckily, he does go in for the spotting. I pop defensive AA to try to protect my Caracciolo from the incoming torpedo strike, so he can get into the cap, and hopefully, with the 2 of us, we can secure the objective. I go for some blind fire shots. I full stop, trying to get some shots on the Östergötland, and hilariously, this thing stops so poorly. I was also a bit afraid of the Östergötland torpedoes, that's why I stopped, but hilariously, you saw how poor the reversing on this thing is. This is running the propulsion mod. Even then, one of those torpedoes basically had my name on it, and I couldn't dodge it in time because, well, the Schultz is a very clumsy destroyer. If you can eat carrier torps, obviously I don't have to tell you how terrifying those Östergötland torpedoes are to me right now. I'd like to drop preemptive torps where the Scharnhorst is going, but my Caracciolo looks to be pushing that way, so I don't want to risk it, because if the carrier strikes him, then I'm kind of negating an opportunity for his maneuvering. I shoot the Östergötland every opportunity I can while trying to provide some AA support. He eats a fair bit of the flak actually, so the planes do get shot down to some extent, but he still gets a strike through and it chunks me hard and forces the damage con. The bright side is that it has taken him long enough to do it that we will be able to secure this objective. I'm not sure exactly what my Pommern and Fiji have been doing. They've been playing like they've just been circling around in A, wasting a lot of time, not really being useful. But at this point, I'm hoping to see if the carrier might spot him. Might spot the Östergötland so I can get some shots on him. I'm very worried about potential torpedoes. I'm worried about him potentially shooting. But I'm also worried about this Scharnhorst just straight up killing off my Caracciolo, and then with the help of the carrier and the Östergötland doing all sorts of things to the rest of my team. Because, let's be honest, the rest of my team isn't exactly impressing me right now. They've taken so long to understand the salient to be. So I just decided to start unloading on the Scharnhorst. He's giving a lot of broadside. It looks like he's trying to drop torps on the Caracciolo and trying to reverse out, and these are of course the situations where the Schultz can deal the maximum amount of damage. So I angle in where I suspect the Östergötland torps to be, or where he might be coming from, and I just start shooting, putting in as much damage as possible on the Scharnhorst. My carrier is still focusing on the Scharnhorst instead of dealing with the Östergötland, which is very scary to me because that Östergötland is obviously dropping torpedoes. And I'm actually quite worried that with our carrier going into the cap that the Östergötland might be torping us. You see the direction where I'm looking? That's where I suspect the DD to be sailing around, because that's where I'd be going. You can get the broadsides on basically our entire team, so why would you not go there? I write in chat, care for Öster, because I'm really worried about that potential crossfire torpedo. Kaga planes, he recalls them. Caracciolo is losing a lot of health. This time he is going the other way, so I try to basically block off the escape of the Scharnhorst by dropping torps in front of him. I turn off my AA because at this point our carrier hasn't been spotting the DD in a long time, and I'm not going to be able to spot him. The torps come exactly from where I suspect they would, but if our DD carrier isn't going to focus the DD, I'm going to just try to see if I can maybe deal with the enemy carrier instead, because that is another way of securing the win in this game. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the rest of my team. My Fiji isn't interested in using his Hydro, and the Pommern, well, he doesn't seem very interested either. They're both sailing towards our spawn, so I'm just going to try to rush down the Kaga as soon as possible. Östergötland gets Confederate. I think he landed torpedoes on our carrier. That would actually make a lot of sense. He's finally being spotted, so obviously I try to take as many pot shots at him as possible. Carrier has finally decided to focus him. I assume he ate some torpedoes, and that's why he's finally focusing him down. Östergötland turns in, and my torps that I launched a long time ago towards the Scharnhorst actually have a really good chance of catching him. He's down to 1.7k right in front of my torpedoes. 600 health right as the torpedo is about to hit. The Indomitable kills him off with rocket planes. But that's kind of another example of how you, if there is an opportunity, just throw out your torps. The game might change quite a bit, but you never know what enemy ships might pop up there. Kaga kills our Caracciolo. I popped my last defensive AA, the last of my consumables. You can see if you're not landing flak, obviously, your AA isn't exactly award-winning, and at this point I'm just trying to rush down and kill the CV as quickly as possible. This time the Fiji and Pommern is with me, so we have triple combined AA, which means that the Kaga should at least have some hesitation in striking us. This is kind of what I hoped to see earlier when we went into B, but it luckily worked out quite well. Another bomb strike comes in. I still have defensive AA running, trying to juke any of the incoming bombs. He drops them a bit too far behind me, and I do get an opportunity to shoot the Kaga. Hoping to get the citadels, of course, but it is quite optimistic. I do in fact get 3 shatters because, well, carriers. We get a nice 4k volley. I try to go for the kill with the follow-up volley, but of course the Indomitable bombs steals the kill from me. A lot of opportunities to potentially get a crack in this game, but we only ended up with 3 kills. 253,000 damage. A lot of XP, of course, because I'm running a lot of the flags. This is my EU account, and on my EU account I have a ton of dragon flags and camos and all sorts of things basically swimming in resources, because it's been in the CC program for something like 5 years, so you tend to rack up a lot of loot on an account like that. 7 torpedoes, 34 planes. That also annoys me. I was literally 1 plane away from getting the AA achievement, something you also don't see too often in the Schultz. One of the devastating strikes got yoinked, but overall still a very solid game. 5 defended caps and 1 assisted capture in that B capture point. 380 shell hits. Team score wise, 3,200 base XP, which is quite good. The tier 7 battleship managing to rank up 2.2k base, which was actually quite impressive. And honestly, he was the most useful of my teammates, actually pushing in and trying to help me when it came to securing the objectives. So I'm pretty sure I actually gave him a compliment later on. Overall though, basically a very strong game. You can see the difference between the Schultz at the bottom, who tried to push in and contest the cap. Instantly torped out of the game and didn't really have any time to influence the battle. That is why you don't contest objectives. I think it's a really stupid design for a destroyer, and I don't think it fits, the ship kind of fits the destroyer slot, but you play the cards you have been dealt. And in the Schultz case, the cards you have been dealt is that you don't fight other DDs in straight up fights, and you don't contest objectives, and you most certainly don't smoke up in positions where you can get torpedoed, which is most often objectives as well. It requires a fairly careful touch when it comes to approaching any sort of gameplay winning moment. Detailed report wise, 34 HE shells, I think it was on a DD at some point, but generally just HE spam all the way. 7 torpedo hits, which is quite uncommon unless you're straight up YOLOing someone, and 58,000 EA defense. Well, it was a Kaga that kind of tends to have never-ending planes, even more so than most CVs tend to have never-ending planes. 22,000 damage received, but overall a very solid game. This was an example of how I play the Schultz, and also kind of how methodical you have to be with choosing how you use your consumables. With the build I have, I am running the build that I had in my original Schultz commentary, which is the full gunboat build. No point showing it again here. I can just link you. Well, you can just look up the previous Schultz vid on my channel. And the build is by far the best, because there's no point trying to build a ship for concealment or anything else, or for torpedoes or anything. The only thing you want to build for is the guns, because those are the bread and butter. Those are the one thing keeping this ship afloat. But even this game would have been a lot harder if the enemy team had not misplayed. Both are we got that worst type of matchmaking where we had 2 Schultz and the enemy had a Yugumo and a Östergötland. A DD with really good AA and gunboat, and another one with really good concealment. Both of them can bully the Schultzes around easily, but luckily both of them got killed or just zoned out, or other fortunate situations. So it does also show Schultz needs a lot of things to go right in order for the ship to be really, really effective. Anyway, that was all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys next time.